Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 14th of January, comes to you from London, and more green on the screen this morning. So we're seeing markets rising. Despite everything we're hearing about the virus and Trump being impeached in the US, markets are taking a lot in their stride. The dollar actually is steadied. It had a bit of a rise this past week, but it has steadied, and we are still bearish below the cloud. Remembering this is my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market with the corresponding point and figure targets. If we look at the euro, that's sitting at 121.60. So again, it's an attempt to recover on the short term, but the medium and long term charts are pretty bullish. Remembering we had this long consolidation pattern we broke out in November, December. This is the re-rating we're seeing on the weekly chart. Probably still has further to run. Taking a look at sterling, we're sitting at 136.57, so we've fallen back a little bit there from the level that we were sitting at 137. So we are but holding that ground against the dollar. We have seen a consistent re-rating of about 10 cents over the last 4 or 5 months. So that is significant. Taking a look at Bitcoin, we're sitting at $38,000. So we've recovered a lot of the ground that we lost. We had a 25% sell-off in a day almost, and then we're recovering. So a shortage of a new upside target. We've got 1 to 45,940. So that's quite key. Taking a look at the S&P 500 index, we see here that we are just holding that ground as well. So market's sitting steady. We edged up yesterday. Tech, we are seeing is pretty flat at the moment. The weekly candle so far looking a little bit doji-ish, but we're just struggling to break further on tech. And if we look at the Dow Jones index, we're up 0.7% there. The future's looking strong today on the S&P. We're up, well, I say strong, up just over 0.25%. The Nasdaq not looking so strong, so we are lagging still on tech. That's quite key. The VIX volatility sitting at 22, so we're still on the fear index. We're still below the cloud on all 3 time frames. The weekly has a little bit of work to do to get there, but the pressure on markets is not showing up in the fear index. Looking at the DAX in Germany, we're up 0.4% this morning. The CAC Quarante up 0.25%. The DAX, interestingly, they're just holding that break to new highs, so that's significant. And the CAC Quarante up 0.25%, as we mentioned. Japan up 0.5%, so looking more and more bullish on that chart. We are bullish on all 3 time frames with good upside targets. Take a look at the long-term targets here. We are looking like we will go higher. The Hang Seng was up just under 1%, and Shanghai was down 1%, but we have had the break and we've got good upside targets. Chinese stocks look set for a good 2021. Sensex in India up just under 0.25%, and the Aussie market up 0.4%. Taking a look at gold, we're sitting just steady on the moment. We just can't quite break above the cloud on the 60-minute chart, and we're seeing some pressure on the daily. As long as we hold 1764 on the long-term chart, that's really what we need to see. But gold is just lagging, whilst we're seeing other markets looking a bit more positive. Silver, on the other hand, is looking a little bit better, up 0.33% this morning. Again, not quite getting through the cloud. And copper, little change, but the trend in copper is still very, very clear. From $2 up to $3.60, it's a really big move over the last almost a year now. US bond yield sitting at 1.1%, looking like this run on the short term will just have a little bit of a turnaround. We hit some cloud resistance there, so that's quite significant. Taking a look at the energy mix now, we've got Brent crude. That's looking edging higher all the time, just can't quite break that 57.40 level that it's made. We do have targets of 57.90 and 58. It does imply we're sort of going that way. We've got a downside target, but the trend is up, so that's quite key. WTI is up 0.25% this morning at $53. The target there is 54.60, 54.70, so target's pointing in that direction. US nat gas $2.77, awaiting storage numbers today, of course. Looking at coal, we're sitting at 72.25. The key thing is we did make a new high on coal, so that's holding. And if we look at emissions, we are just struggling to break that €35 mark, and we've come back a little bit, looking like on the short-term chart we might see a bit of downward pressure, and we have got a downside target here to 32, so we may have further pullback on that. Looking at MBP, we're down 2% this morning. We've settled down after some very wild gyrations this week. And TTF down 2% as well, so that's quite significant. We are just seeing that pullback there. We've got downside targets to 21, 21.20, so that's quite key. Also looking at TTF against LNG, we see TTF on the red chart, just really sort of similar behaviour. LNG's obviously done a lot more recently, and a lot of people pointing to that, but cold weather snaps in both Asia and Europe have had an impact, but good to keep an eye on that LNG chart as well. Taking a look at the power markets now, we go to German power first of all, of course, sitting at 49.80. Just haven't been able to hold that €50 mark. Looking like on the short-term chart, we might just see a little bit of downward pressure. We did have some quite nice upside targets, but these new downside targets are starting to rule, so you've got to take that into account. The trend looking good still on the longer-term daily chart. We do have a downside target of 48, so it suggests we might just pull back before we rise. The long-term picture is very bullish for power, but short-term we just are seeing a little bit of a weakening there. Taking a look at French power, we're sitting at 51.90, holding on to the gains there as well. And if we take a look at Nordic power on the cow, we're up 1% this morning. Again, just sitting in this range on Nordic power between sort of 26 and 29. So just watch for a break below those levels, but lots of support there, as we can see. And that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.